Well, this evening we will be discussing the scourge of bullying in schools across the country. We want to encourage our viewers to please call in and share your views and possibly some of your questions with us this evening. But joining us on the phone line is David Funzai, South African Democratic Students Movement Gauteng spokesperson. Also joining us is Matakanya, National Association of School Governing Bodies General Secretary. David, I'm going to start with you. Thank you for joining us here on ANN7 Prime this evening. Bullying has always been an issue in South African schools. In fact, across the globe, we've seen this coming to the fore more and more. We've seen female learners being assaulted by male learners. We've heard this very tragic news now of a 13-year-old boy dying at the hands of being bullied. Is this becoming more and more prevalent, would you say, in South African schools?
Yes, thanks for having me on this debate. Firstly, we need to remember that it's not the first time that we're discussing this issue. And then also, the first time when we discussed this issue, there were solutions that it's better for the government to have maybe a punishment, legal punishment. Because now, if you can see, now someone has died now. And then if you have seen the police, they are also saying that, no, we're going to interact with schools and everything, but there is no legal punishment for such people who have done that. And then now, how does the family going to get closure at the end of the day? They are not going to get closure. And then now, it's going to create a problem also for us. If I've got a child who's going to be bullied at school also, what am I going to do as a parent? If I say that, okay, I'm going to reiterate on such issues, is it going to be good now? And then it's not going to be good as a parent to do such. Now, I think the government, what needs to be done is that they must have a legal punishment for people who do such, because if there is no legal punishment, this thing is still going to continue and continue. And then the more it continues, the more it's going to create more problems. Because also the teachers, they don't have powers, because they will have to remember that corporal punishment was taken out. And then now it means that the teachers, they no longer have got powers. And then also, we need to remember where are those children are coming from. Because those children who are bullying other children, it means that they are seeing it from home, where their parents, they are being abused by their fathers, or maybe they have been bullied also. And then it means that for them, they see it as something that they should do it every day. And then if you are doing it to someone else, it's going to be taken as a bully at school. And then it's not good, because when we take a child to school, you are saying that he's going to learn something at school, not to be bullied. And then you cannot expect someone to learn where he's being bullied every day. Because at the end of the day, you might find out that they were also taking his pocket money, his lunch, and everything. How is that person going to make sure that he gets that education? Because he's not going to be focused, because he's an empty stomach. And then also, an issue which is very, very important to our society is that if the government is not prioritizing this bullying at school to make sure that this thing is eradicated, it's going to create a problem for us. Because now we are talking here, and then we say that we need the government to make sure that it does 1, 2, 3. At the end of the day, the government is not saying anything now.
Indeed, I agree with you 100%. Schools are supposed to be a place of safety, and exactly where these kids are learning this sort of behavior is a question in itself. But let's go over to Matakanya. Thank you very much for joining us here on ANN7 Prime. I think another question here is who takes responsibility ultimately with regards to these sort of situations? I mean, a mother coming home to find her 13-year-old son passed away on his bed due to bullying is very, very disturbing, and can only imagine what that family is going through. But who do we blame in situations like this? Does schools need to take more responsibility? Is it the government, or is it the parents themselves?
Good evening, Abigail. Good evening, David. Good evening, all the listeners of AAN7. And National Association of School Governing Body has always emphasized the question of parenting, the question of parental involvement. However, in this instance, we feel the school governing bodies have to strengthen now the code of conduct for learners, and there must be effective compliance now from all the authorities within the school, because we believe that there is no compliance in terms of the policies, because there must be policies that regulate the behavior of children, and also in line with other policies that regulate the school community. So that we really should not see these things, because we always talk about these things, but there is no really change. I mean, question of bullying, question of violence in schools is not abated, it's continuing. So, but what we are saying is that we can bring the army, we can bring the police, we can bring every security agency in the school. They will not solve this problem. But now, we are saying this problem can only solved by us as parents, all the parents, at whatever level, from home to school, from school, home. Then parents get closer to their children, to talk to their children, because it will not give us any scientific answer if then we start now pointing fingers at what is happening. We know that these things are happening in schools, and they used to happen, but now that we are living in a democracy, we have got freedom of doing anything, then we start to know these things. But they've been happening. But now, I think it's time that we as a school community, in support of the school government, because they've got the authority to regulate, to formulate the code of conduct for learners in the school. But I think when it comes to compliance, that's where the problem is. So we would like also to emphasize that now there must be compliance. People who are given authority to ensure that whoever create violence in school must be quickly punished. Whoever is bullying any other child in school. I mean, we can't wait for a day when the child passed on or the child has been killed in the school, then we react as a society. I think time has come, and time is now, that we just have to stop. Although we should not leave the police also out, we are saying they have to support the schools. They must ensure that now they support, their presence is important in schools in order that now these children, not only children, as I said, the school community must realize that now there is law in this country, and that law must be respected. And one of the respect that must emphasize is not to bully any other child in school. But that now, it must be through the teachings of the parents, the teachings of the teachers, the teachings of the management, the teachings of the community also, because school is a reflection of a community. What is happening in community, then these children bring it into school. So the community must stand up and have one message and one message, that violence has never solved any problem. Indeed. And will not have the problems like the problem that we had recently.
Mr. Matakanya, stay with us. We want to continue engaging with you on this topic and rather pose further questions to you about responsibility here and who ultimately should be held accountable in regards to this specific story. I want to encourage our viewers to please call in and share your views with us. We are joined by Matlala, who is in Benoni. Good evening to you. Thank you for joining us. What do you have to share with us this evening?
Hi, Abigail. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
Abigail, you know, the problem we're sitting in is the problem of racism. 99% of this bullying in schools, 99.9% of the kids, they learn it from home. It's the responsibility of the parents. We must come to a stand and say, enough is enough. It's also the responsibility of our government. None of those, I'm staying in Benoni, try to visit one of these English medium schools. My dear, you'll be shocked.
Why do you say that? What's happening there?
Bullying is everywhere. As long as the executive, they are white, bullying lives there. Unfortunately, some of the institutions no one to come out and report it. Even this matter now, the one that we're talking about now, come 2-3 months, the matter will just vanish. So it's the responsibility of the parents to say to the executive of the school, oh, enough is enough.
All right, thank you, sir, for sharing your views with us. We appreciate you sharing those with us. We've also joined in studio, rather, by Mr. Anthony Williams. Mr. Williams, thank you for joining us here in studio. I just want to elaborate on what Matlala has said, linking bullying to race. I don't necessarily agree with those sort of statements, but I do agree that parents are partly responsible to ensure that their children don't grow up and want to bully and don't become bullies. But do you think that bullying is necessarily related to race?
Well, there's quite a number of issues that are at play at any given time. I think one of the major things that we've got to confront as a country, and we haven't dealt with this, when we established this country, much of what we haven't dealt with at a foundational level is the psyche, of South Africans. That much of what's happening in terms of bullying also emanates from historically, and until we begin to look at the historical issues, in particular in the different races, and let's talk about the so-called Black African race, in its entirety. We would love to refer to it rather as the indigenous African race. If we could begin to unpack the issues within that space of the indigenous African people, and that we have not dealt with all the, the underlying factors of the psyche of this group of people. And until we do that, we run the risk of just patching up all the time. So what you see, the display down at school level, is really very much born in the psyche of young children, and it's also probably there's an element of genetics also, that one also have got to consider. But the real issues are, we have not dealt with the structural issues of this country, the structural psychology of this nation, and until we deal with the structural psychology of this nation, we just bound to running in circles. That's why you see teachers are bullying children. That's our case in Klipspruit West Secondary School is a case in point, where the teacher has been, for over 8 years, have been bullying the children. That's the reason why the community in Klipspruit West is up in arms. That's why we're sitting around the table now with the Gauteng Education Department trying to sort out something that was supposed to be sorted out a long time ago. But it's also even ingrained even in the psyche of educators. And it comes back to the structural issues. Until we deal with the structural psychology of indigenous African people, we run the risk of just patching up, and we are not going to, we're not going to get anywhere. And we're really calling upon all the relevant stakeholders to, in particular, education is a very, very critical component of a party to the unpacking and dissecting of the issues. Until the education department and those in the psychology department look at into these issues, we are just going to run in circles.
And to get to a point where a child actually dies at the hands of bullies is very, very unfortunate. We're also joined on the phone line by Theo Oliver, ANC Education Spokesperson, the Western Cape Legislature. Theo, good evening. Thank you for joining us here on ANN7 Prime. We've heard these stories coming to the fore more and more often. A 13-year-old dying, a pupil being stabbed on school premises, a female learner being assaulted at the hands of a male learner. Are these issues becoming more and more prevalent? Are we just hearing of them more and more? And now it's obviously cause for concern. How do we tackle situations like this?
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. Yes, I think the problem is getting worse. It's getting worse. I'm in the Western Cape, for example, and I listen to your guest, and I fully agree with them. It's a societal problem. Discipline starts at home. Your child, if your child is disciplined at home and they understand what are the rules set at home, and when they get into the premise of the school, they are able then to be supplemented by that which the educators assisting or giving them. But currently in the Western Cape, and if you know, Western Cape is well known for areas with huge gang violence, and young learners getting up in the morning, hear gunshots, and so on, and getting involved in drug activities as small as they are. And when they get into class, it becomes a territorial thing, who's in which gang and who's in what gang, and this thing starts to play itself out in the class. And unfortunately, then you find educators who are unable to deal with the issue, because some of them are not fully trained to deal with the issues, and some of the teachers are also, in a sense, been bullied by some of the learners, and hence this issue is a societal problem. And I agree that it needs a comprehensive and an integrated approach on how we deal with it as a society. It should start really at home, and it moves out to classroom. And I send my condolences to all those parents now that must sit with this child who passed on because of bullying at school. And every sitting in the legislature, for an example, in the Western Cape, this issue has been raised. On every sitting on bullying, we're getting reports, getting headlines, we're getting learners being bullied. So the problem seems to me, instead of being resolved, it's getting worse. And it needs all of our collective effort in dealing with the problem.
Indeed, it is. It does seem to be getting worse. We want you to stay with us, Mr. Oliver, please. We want to continue this discussion with you. We are encouraging our viewers to please call in, share your views and comments with us this evening. The number will be flashing on your screen. We are joined by Anonymous from Vereeniging. Anonymous, good evening. What do you want to share with us?
Hi, good evening. I'd just like to... Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. If you could just turn down your television, I think that's the issue.
This is actually an issue in many schools. It's not a racial thing. It's actually I would say, the word I'm looking for is, the home setup. The situation at home where the children come from homes where there's violence. And that violence, they try and perpetrate it at school, and they act on it. Then what else is a very, very big factor is alcoholism. Alcoholism plays a factor here because these children see their parents on weekends or whatever doing abusive in that alcoholic state, and then they imitate them. So the teachers have nothing, they can do nothing about it. Even if you try to stop a fight, they push the teachers away. So teachers' hands are tied. So the government has to change their laws by implementing corporal punishment. The children of today, they know their rights, but they don't know their responsibilities. And that's the biggest problem we're having.
All right. Thank you very much, Anonymous, for sharing your comments with us. I want to go back to Mr. Matakanya and just pose this question to you. Are teachers, in your view and your opinion, trained to handle these sorts of situations? I mean, listening to an interview the mother did with another publication, she said that bullies know where to bully. They know where teachers aren't around, and they know where to take advantage of these sort of situations. Are teachers well enough trained to deal with these sort of issues?
Well, teachers are trained to deliver curriculum, but within the delivery of the curriculum, then there are also, the cost that's also added to the teacher is psychology. They are trained to know that they are going to work with the young minds, but they are going to work with the minds. And the minds are different, and particularly teachers are faced with the number of minds in a school, in a class particularly. You find that you have got 40 minds in a class, but they are trained along those lines. However, trained as they are, there are challenges. Challenges like, for instance, the challenge that we are talking about. that as much as teachers are trained to work with the young minds, then there are challenges that come from that particular community or that particular society, you know. That society, in some instances, they don't respect the rule of law. They don't respect the norms within that. And of course, and I would not say the hands of teachers are tied up. No. I mean, if we say corporal punishment must come back, I mean, we are putting these teachers really at risk, because we'll be perpetuating the very same violence that we are trying to discourage and say there is no way that we can solve our problems through violence. We cannot solve our problem through beating one another. And this is what we discourage. And that's why, finally, the corporal punishment in school is outlawed, you know. And that is the objective behind that, you know. So, hence we are saying, really, the solution lies with the society, solution lies with the community, you know. Because the truth of the matter is that in a school, you will find that now there are few elements.
All right, Mr. Matakanya, let me just get another view and another opinion here in studio. I'm going to come back to Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams, how do we tackle the situation? Mr. Matakanya brought up the issue of corporal punishment, saying violence isn't necessarily the answer. Do we implement further measures in schools, issues of mentoring, further playground monitoring? How do we solve these issues?
That's exactly. I'm going to agree with him that violence, violence does not settle any score. If you're gonna, because the moment you begin to you see corporal punishment, you know, as one way of meeting discipline, you know, against unruly kids, you are just perpetuating violence, you know. And we've got to think more imaginative, you know, coming up more with innovative solutions as
Mr.
to
Williams,
how we do
unfortunately, I have to just stop you there.
Right.
I do apologize, but the special ANC NEC meeting is currently underway in Irene, Pretoria, discussing